the next thing we need to do is make the frame that is going to support this. So anytime you're making something, it's very helpful to make a list of parts. So what I have right here, sorry, so there's no shadow, cornhole cut list. This is for each board, right? We're making 2 boards, so we're going to have to double this list. Sorry, those are all right here. Then we're going to need 2 legs. The legs are 3/4 thick by 2 9/16 wide by 10 inches long. The 10 inches is longer than they need to be. The reason for that is on one side we're going to cut around on those so they can pivot. Right, so it's going to be rounded like this on one side, and over here we're going to have an angled cut. So as they fold out, they sit flat on the floor. We'll put a hole in the middle of these that we're going to put a bolt through as the pivot for the legs. So the 10 inches is longer than this finished number. And then we also need 1 leg connector, 3/4 inch thick. This one is going to be 5 inches wide. And then my number is 11 7/8 long. So that is this piece right here. We're going to have, I'll show you this later, but that'll go between the legs. Alright, so we made our list of parts to cut. The pieces are in the shop. They are already 3/4 inch thick. Not that one. Well, the plywood is that size already. These pieces, 1, 2, 3, are already 3/4 thick by 2 9/16 wide. We are going to have to cut them to the finished lengths of 31, 13.5, and the 10 inches long. We also have a stack of 3/4 thick by 5 inches wide on the cart. Those are going to be cut to that 11 7/8 number. Alright, so I've got a piece right here. This is already 3/4 thick by 2 9/16 wide, but you can see the end on this one is messed up. It's got a big knot right here too. Anytime you have knots or big defects, you generally want to cut those out. This one's a pretty big knot, so I would like to cut that out. Down here, this end looks pretty good, but we're going to trim it up. So for that, we'll go over to the miter saw. I know it's a scary tool, so if you're not comfortable using it, I can help you cut stuff. Somebody else in the shop who has experience or is comfortable doing it can help you cut stuff. So what I would like to do is trim this end. It's rounded, there's a big knot right there. So I'm going to cut that knot off, right? Bring it past where my saw blade is going to cut. And you want to make sure that it's tight to the fence right here and also tight to the bed. If I were to cut this with the piece off of the bed, as that saw blade spins, right, the saw blade spins this way. So as that spins, it would kick this piece back really hard, really fast. So you have to make sure that your piece is tight against the fence and the bed. You always want to have your arms not crossed. You never want to have your arms crossed. So for this side, I'm going to put my right hand up here, my left hand up on the saw. So my arms are not crossed. Let the saw blade come to a stop, raise it up, throw away our scrap. Now, we've got a good cut on that side. Let's say, what size is this one going to be? Alright, for this example, I'm going to make this one of my 13.5 inch pieces. So I've hooked my tape measure over there. We're going to go over to 13.5 right there. I'm going to put a mark right at 13.5, and I'm putting a line on this side, saying that this side of the line is my waist side of the board. We're going to keep this side we don't need. Alright, so we'll bring that piece over to the saw. Let's see. bring my saw blade down so the left side of the blade is right at that mark. That's right where we want to be. Right there. Alright. On my saw, I've got the stop block. It rides in this rail. You tighten this to lock it in position. So this stop is good for any time you're making repeated cuts and you want to have every piece be the exact same length. So I'm going to loosen the nut over here. I'm going to bring it over until my stop just touches my piece. Just like that. And then I'm going to tighten down the nut. Now I could just butt every piece into that gently, and my saw blade should be right at the right spot to make that cut, which it is. One thing to watch out for is over time the saw creates dust, right? The dust can get stuck between your fence and your piece. So that's why there's a little angled cut there, so that if there is dust, it'll get pushed underneath. But you want to make sure that the dust doesn't get in there and hold your piece off your fence. Alright, so now I'm going to cut this piece. Okay, I got my two 13.5-inch pieces. So if we look over here, these are the 13.5-inch pieces. You can see there's two holes at the end to screw this board into this board, and there's two holes on the edge to screw this one down to our plywood. Also two more holes over here to screw this into that. If we look at our long pieces, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 holes total on that. And when you drill those, you want to make sure that they're symmetrical and spaced somewhat. We'll go 2 inches in over here and put a mark 2 inches. Then we'll go 10 inches in over here, put a mark 10 inches. Then we're going to go down here from this end. We'll go 2 inches in, and we'll go 10 inches in on that. Those are going to be the spots where we put our screw holes. If you look at these end pieces, I went 3 inches in on those. So we'll go 3 inches in there, 3 inches in here, and then we're also going to do 2 holes going this way, this way, this way, and this way. This piece right here is our leg connector. So we're going to have a leg coming down here and a leg over on this side also. Put 2 holes on each end of that one. About 3/4 of an inch in from this edge. There, there, here, and here. Alright, so this machine right here is called a Craig jig. It's different than the one we have at school. The one we have at school is a lot easier to use, but it can be adjusted up and down. So if you loosen this, it raises up and down for different material thicknesses. And then we have this bit here that has a very narrow tip and a wider rest of the bit. So that's for the screw head to sit on that wide spot. What I'm going to do is take my piece I have right here, right? I have marks on this side, so I'll put the marks out like this. Alright, I've got a foot pedal over here, so as I push down on that foot pedal, this clamp comes over and locks our piece in. Right? There's a few different holes in here. What we do is we take our bit, put it in the hole, and then it comes out over there and creates a hole in the piece. So I'm going to take a piece right here, line up my line with whatever hole I'm going to use, clamp it down, and drill it. And then it creates a hole like that. do all the holes. They're all going to be on the same side. So now we've got our holes. 2 holes on the end, 2 holes on the other end, and then another 2 holes going down to screw it to the plywood. You'll do that for all 5 of your pieces. Alright, so as I said before, we want to be about a half of an inch in from the edge of our plywood to this board, right? So we have a 1/2 inch space right there on the edge of our plywood. That's going to be all the way around. It's very helpful anytime you need to make to have something a consistent dimension off the edge, to use a tool to mark it out. So I have this combination square. You can loosen this right here, and then you can turn it in, slide it out. But for what we're doing right now, I want to have a 1/2 inch. It's hard to see in the camera, but I want to have a 1/2 inch sticking out. So that'll be right there. Now I can hold the end of this against the edge of my piece, and I can mark it out. And I'm just going to mark the corners. One thing I did not say is that anytime you are working with a piece, selecting something, you want to see whatever side is the best side for your face, right? So if you look at this plywood, this side is nice and smooth. There's no big knots. We have a little pin knot right there, but that's no problem. If you look at the other side, we've got a big knot right there with filler, another knot right there with some filler. So this will be our back side. We want to use the good side as the face. We're going to mark the back side because that's the bottom where our wood goes. So again, I'm going to take my combination square and mark out that 1/2 inch number on the corners. So as we put our wood on there, our wood will go right to it like that. Right to it like that. Again, come over here. We're going to go our 1/2 inch in, 1/2 inch over here, 1/2 inch in, 1/2 inch over. Okay, now we've got to mark there, 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 and there. Also, what I didn't mark out yet was the 1/2 inch in on the edge here. So we'll take that combination square, we'll put a mark there. We'll do the same thing here. 1/2 inch in, then I'll square the line across. Same thing on this one. We're marking the side that has our holes on it because that's the inside of the board. 1/2 inch up, square the line. Same thing here. 1/2 inch up, square the line. So our other piece is going to go right there on the inside of that line. All right. Cornhole boards are used outside generally. We are going to glue our parts together so they stick better. It's just a lot stronger of a product if you use wood glue. But because they will be outside and they might be left outside, we want to choose the right kind of wood glue to use. So I have this Titebond original wood glue, which is for interior use. If this glue gets wet, it will fall apart. I also have an older bottle of Titebond 3 Ultimate wood glue right there, waterproof, superior strength. So we're going to use the waterproof wood glue for this project because it might get left outside. One thing to note with this glue, is because it is waterproof. If you get it on your clothes and you don't wash it out right away, it will not come out of your clothes. So if you do get it on your clothes, make sure you wash it out with some soap and water right away. We also have aprons in the shop if you want to use an apron. We have these Starbucks barista aprons, so you can use those to keep the glue off of your clothes. Alright, so for screwing our parts together, we have these special screws to use with those holes. They're called Craig screws. This is the screw. It has a flat head underneath here. It's got coarse threads because we're using a soft wood. They also make these screws with a fine thread for hardwoods, but we're going to use the coarse thread. It also has this section of the screw right there that helps to cut into wood. The head on these is a number 2 square. So for that, we're going to use this long number 2 square bit. That bit goes right into the screw head like so. So what I would like to see you all do is put your parts together, being your wood parts, not your plywood, your wood parts together first. So we're going to screw this together so that our piece of wood is right on the inside of that line right there. We want to make sure that the edges of our wood here and here are flush so that the whole thing sits tight to the plywood down here. All right, we are going to put our bit into our drill. Make sure we have the right setting on this. That's too strong. We're going with the soft wood, so I'm going to turn it down to about a 4, and I'm going to change the speed to number 1. Now I have some screws ready. I have my Type Bond 3 wood glue, and I have my other pieces ready to go. So I'm going to put a little bit of wood glue on the end of this piece. You could smear it on if you want. Just don't put that finger on your clothes. Whip it on a rag, that's fine. Now we're going to butt these two together like so. Again, making sure that all of our holes are on the inside of our pieces, and then we'll screw it all together. Alright, so we just put glue on that. Anytime you're using the Craig screws, there's a tendency, because you're screwing on an angle, right? The screw's going like this. So there's a tendency for this piece to want to pull over that way. To stop that from happening, I'm going to use a clamp to hold everything in position. So we want to make sure that we're on our line right there. Right? If we look right here, I just have that line showing. I'm not sure if you can see that in the video. Right there, just showing right there. Now we can take our clamp and we can clamp it all in position. When you're clamping this, do your best to make sure that your clamp is straight. So it should be centered over this piece. And that'll keep everything pretty well in position and square. I'm just adjusting it because things moved as I put the clamp on, but I think I like it right there. Now we're going to put a screw in each of those holes. Do one up top. It's a little weak right there, so I'm going to turn that up to about 8. And we'll do one down below. Alright, now we'll do that on the rest of our joints. So we're going to do it here, over here, and then down there, and down here. Time-lapse time. Okay, I just realized I forgot something. What I forgot was to put a handle on these. So I am going to unscrew what I just did, and we're going to put a handle on. Whoops. Okay, so I just took the one off because we're doing a handle only on one side. What I would like to do for the handle is create a scoop out in the center of this piece, right? So if it's 31 inches long overall, we want to find our center. So if you know the math, you know that 15.5 is the center of 31, right? You can double check it by measuring the other way. 15.5 is right in the middle there. Now, my hand is about 4 inches wide, right? So I'm going to make the cutout here 4 inches wide. So I'm going to hold my 10 right on my line. I'm going to go over 2 inches this way and then 2 inches this way. We're going to create a cutout shape in there. So we'll cut it about, how far is that? I'd like to give you guys a number here. Let's go 1.5 inches down right there. So for that, you can use your combination square, set it to 1.5 inches, or you can measure it like I did, and then you can lock your hand in position and make the line go straight across there. We want to go over to 4 inches, 2 inches overall, and put lines on there. Now, this is square right here, and right down here would be square. I don't like that. I like to have smooth curves, right?